Jack Stone lived a simple life. He worked alone in a dusty garage on the edge of New Houston. Every day, he fixed broken space bikes and delivery drones. He didn't have many friends, and he didn't care. Jack liked machines more than people. They were easier to understand. They didn't lie, and they didn't leave. He had no family, no dreams, and no future, just the sound of metal and oil in his small workshop. One day, everything changed. It was a hot afternoon, and Jack was working on an old shuttle engine. Suddenly, the sky turned dark, not from clouds, but from a strange shadow. A giant black ship hovered above the garage. It had no engines, no lights, and no markings. It was silent and still. Jack dropped his wrench and stared, his heart pounding like a drum. The ship slowly came down, landing in front of him without making a sound. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. The ship opened, but no one came out. Instead, a small silver orb floated towards him. It glowed softly and stopped right in front of Jack's face. Then it spoke in a calm, deep voice. "Jack Stone, you are the last heir of the Auron Empire. You must come now." The orb flashed once, then disappeared. Jack stood there, frozen. What was the Auron Empire? Why him? Before he could think more, black cars appeared on the horizon. They were fast, too fast, and they were not from Earth. Men in dark suits jumped out. Their eyes glowed red, and their skin looked wrong, like plastic stretched over bone. They pulled out strange weapons and aimed at Jack. "Give us the key," one of them growled. Jack didn't understand, but he ran. Bullets of blue light hit the ground around him, burning holes in the metal. Just when he thought it was over, the black ship opened again. A ramp came down, glowing with blue lines. The ship had chosen him. He ran inside, and the ramp closed behind him. The Sci-Fi rose into the sky on its own. Jack fell into a seat as the ship blasted into space. He had no control, no map, nothing, only silence and stars outside the window. Then, a voice spoke from the ship itself. It was the same calm voice from before. "Welcome, heir of the Auron. Your wife is waiting." Jack blinked, confused. Wife? He didn't have a wife. He never even had a girlfriend for more than a few weeks. Was this some kind of dream? Some space prank? But his heart told him it was real, too real. The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. Colors twisted outside like rainbows on fire. Jack felt sick, but also awake. Alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was something more, something ancient. And somewhere out there, a strange alien woman was waiting for him, calling him her husband. Why him? Why now? He had no answers, only stars, and the message that started it all. The ship slowed down. Stars stopped racing past the windows. Jack felt the ship descend toward a bright, glowing planet. Its sky was violet, and its clouds sparkled like gold. The world didn't look real. It looked like a dream drawn by someone who had never seen Earth. The ship landed on a floating platform above the sea. Strange birds with 6 wings flew by, singing in musical tones. As the ramp opened, warm wind touched Jack's face. It smelled like flowers and electricity. He stepped out slowly, his boots tapping on smooth crystal ground. A group of tall alien guards stood in silver armor. They didn't speak, but they bowed. One of them turned and said, "This way, my king." Jack wanted to laugh. He was no king. He was a mechanic who fixed broken junk, but he followed anyway. He had no other choice. The palace was made of floating glass towers that changed color as the sun moved. Everything shimmered. Walls, floors, even the air. Jack felt like he was walking inside a giant diamond. He passed strange statues of tall beings with wings and long robes. Some of them looked human. Too human. It made him uneasy. They brought him to a grand hall with high ceilings and golden lights. At the end of the hall stood a woman. She was unlike anything Jack had seen before. She had silver blue skin, glowing white eyes, and hair like flowing starlight. She wore a robe that looked like living fabric. Shifting between colors, she looked powerful, dangerous, and beautiful beyond reason. She walked toward him with calm, perfect steps. "Jack Stone," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "I am Lyra, High Commander of the Auron Guard, and your wife." Jack blinked. "Wife?" he said, confused. "Yes," she replied. "By ancient law, The heir must marry the royal guardian. You are the heir, and I am the guardian. This union was chosen by your bloodline, Jack laughed nervously. I done. I even know you. Lyra didn't smile. You will, she said. The Auron Empire is dying. We need a leader. You are the last of the royal line. You must claim the throne. Jack shook his head. I'm just a guy who fixes things. I don't belong here. Lyra looked at him for a long moment, then she said, That is your human mind speaking. Your blood remembers more than you think. She stepped closer, and something strange happened. A soft light connected them, glowing between their chests. Jack felt a warmth, a connection. Like a locked door in his soul had opened just a little, he saw flashes of another life, a baby floating in a crystal cradle, a planet burning, a woman screaming his name. It wasn't Lyra, but she had Lyra's eyes. Jack stepped back, breathing hard. What was that? Lyra whispered. The bond has begun. It is old magic from before time. It means you are real. It means you are home. Before he could answer, the lights in the hall turned red. A loud voice echoed through the palace. Alert. Unknown ships detected. Battle mode active. Lyra's calm face turned serious. She said, They found you. Jack looked at her, unsure. Who? She answered with a single word. Traitors. She turned to him, pulled a glowing blade from her hip, and said, Stay behind me, my king. The palace shook. Alarms howled through the golden halls like wolves crying in the wind. Outside, the sky turned dark as enemy ships blocked out the sun. Jack stood frozen while armored guards ran past him. Lyra turned to him, calm but fierce. This is your first test, she said. Jack replied, I didn't sign up for this. But it was too late for fear. She led him to a command room where glass walls showed the battle above. The enemy ships were black and sharp like knives in space. They moved in perfect formations. No warning, no message, just destruction. Who are they? Jack asked, watching explosions light up the sky. Lyra stood beside him, hands behind her back. They call themselves the Varn, she said. They were once part of the Auron Empire. But when the Empire weakened, they broke away. Now they want the throne. Jack stared at her. Why attack now? Lyra looked at him with unreadable eyes. Because they know the heir has returned. The room trembled as a nearby tower exploded. Sparks flew from the ceiling and guards shouted into strange devices. Lyra grabbed Jack's arm. We're moving, she said. They ran through the palace tunnels, past ancient statues and glowing vines. Each step felt like a countdown. Each turn felt like a trap. They reached a hidden chamber with a round metal door. Lyra placed her hand on a panel and it scanned her DNA. The door opened to a training room, filled with alien weapons. Blades floated in midair, hovering like ghosts. Energy guns hummed softly on racks. Armor suits lined the walls like sleeping giants. You must choose, she said. Jack frowned. Choose what? A weapon, she replied. You are a king, not a prisoner. Jack hesitated, then picked up a light spear. It extended at his touch, glowing blue with hidden power. Good, Lyra said. That belonged to your grandfather. He once used it to defeat 20 Varnassus. Sins. Jack raised an eyebrow. No pressure then. Before he could test it, the chamber lights dimmed. An eerie whisper filled the air. Found you, the voice said. From the shadows, 3 cloaked figures stepped forward. They weren't guards, they weren't even alive. Their bodies flickered like shadows wearing armor. Their eyes burned red, like dying suns. The Varn sent shades, Lyra whispered. They're not soldiers. They're assassins. Jack gripped the spear tighter, heart racing. One of the shades lunged at him. Jack barely dodged, slashing wildly. To his surprise, the spear moved with him. It guided his hand like it remembered battle. Jack struck the shade's chest, and it burst into dark mist. Another came from behind, but Lyra spun and cut it down with her blade. Their movements were perfect, like dancers in a deadly ballet. The last shade smiled with a broken mouth. You are not ready, it hissed. You will burn like your ancestors. Then it vanished into black smoke. Jack stood there breathing hard. His shirt was torn and his arms shook, but he was alive, and something inside him felt awakened. Lyra looked at him with something new in her eyes, not just duty, maybe respect. You survived, she said. Jack replied, barely, but I'm not going to run. Lyra nodded slowly. Then maybe there is hope. Outside, the enemy ships were retreating, but Jack knew this was just the beginning. The shadows had found him, and they wouldn't stop until he was either king or dead. The war room was quiet, too quiet. Jack stood at the center of a glowing table that showed a map of the stars. Lines blinked in red, showing enemy movements near the border. All around him, alien advisors stood still, waiting for him to speak. He didn't know what to say. He was still learning how this empire worked. At the edge of the room stood General Kron. He was a giant of a man with bronze skin and metal plates on his arms. His voice was deep and sharp like thunder breaking stone. Your Majesty, Kron said, we must strike first. Before the Varn return, Jack frowned. They just retreated, he said. They're watching, not attacking. We need to prepare, not provoke. Kron's eyes narrowed. Preparation is weakness, he said. In war, only the strong survive. Jack didn't answer right away. He looked to Lyra, who stood silent beside him. She gave no signal, no hint. She was letting Jack decide. He took a deep breath and spoke. We won't start another war. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, we've already lost. There was silence. Then Kron smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold and sharp. As you command, my king, he said, bowing low. But Jack felt something shift in the air. A warning, unseen but loud. Later that night, Jack walked alone through the lower halls of the palace. He needed space to think, to breathe, to understand who to trust. The walls were covered with paintings of past rulers, strong, noble, terrifying. He didn't feel like one of them. He still felt like a man from Earth who had fallen into someone else's dream. As he turned a corner, he heard voices behind a thick wall. He stopped and listened. It was Kron speaking in low tones. He is weak, Kron said. He thinks peace is strength. He does not deserve the throne. Another voice replied. What of the Guardian? Lyra. Jack held his breath. She is bound by the shrine. Bond, Kron said, but she will not stop me. The words hit Jack like ice water. Kron was planning something, and Lyra might not be able to stop him. Jack slipped away before they noticed. He had to act fast, but he couldn't go to the court. Too many were loyal to Kron. He needed someone who knew the system but didn't belong to it. That someone was Zari, a rebel spy locked in the palace dungeon. Jack had read her file earlier. She fought against the Auron Empire once, but only because it had lost its honor. Now maybe she could help save it. He visited her cell at midnight. She was thin, with bright green eyes that saw through lies. You're the king, she said as he entered. Jack nodded. And I need a traitor to catch a traitor. She smiled, showing sharp teeth. Now you're starting to sound like a ruler. With her help, Jack uncovered hidden messages, secret troops, and false orders. Kron was building a private army. In 3 days he would strike. He planned to declare Jack unfit and take the throne by force. Jack returned to the throne room that evening. He didn't wait. He called Kron forward and held up a glowing cube. It played a recording. Kron's own words. He does not deserve the throne. Gasps filled the hall. Guards raised weapons, but Jack pointed to the side wall. Zari stood there in stolen armor, holding proof of Kron's treason. Kron roared and charged. Jack stepped aside. Lyra met Kron mid-charge and brought him to his knees with one blow. Jack looked down at the general. This empire will not be ruled by fear, he said. Kron was taken away, but Jack knew more enemies would rise, because power always creates shadows, and in those shadows, betrayal waits. The palace library was not made of books, it was made of memory. Rows of crystal pillars stretched across the chamber, each one glowing with data. When touched, they whispered stories from the past, voices of kings, queens, generals, traitors, and forgotten heroes. Jack stood alone among them. The war room was quiet now. The halls were calm, but inside his mind, a storm was growing. Who was he really? Why did this empire call him heir? And why did his blood feel so old? Lyra stood outside, giving him space. She had begun to trust him, maybe even believe in him, but trust was not enough. Jack needed truth. He placed his hand on a glowing red pillar. The crystal responded to his DNA. It opened a hidden path beneath the floor. A staircase made of light formed in front of him. Jack stepped down slowly. Each step felt heavier, as if time itself pushed against him. At the bottom, he found a vault. Its door was smooth black stone. In the center, a silver circle pulsed with energy. It scanned his face and spoke. "Welcome, Prince Kael of House Solari." Jack froze. "Kael?" he whispered. That name, it felt distant but familiar. A name lost in a forgotten dream. The door opened, revealing a small room. Inside were three things: a cradle made of crystal, a broken crown, and a hollow scroll still glowing. Jack picked up the scroll. A woman's voice began to speak. "Kael, my son," it said. "If you are hearing this, the Empire has fallen. I was your mother, Queen Serena. We sent you away to Earth when the Varn attacked. You were only a baby." Jack closed his eyes. A sharp pain hit his chest. His real mother, his real name, his real past, all of it hidden in silence. The voice continued. "They will try to use you. Some will want to protect you. Others will want to destroy you. But you must lead, Kael. You are the last flame of our blood. You are hope." Jack dropped to one knee. He wasn't just Jack Stone. He was Kael Solari, born from royal blood, hidden from death, saved by exile. Lyra entered the vault, her steps soft. "You found it," she said. Jack nodded. "I'm not who I thought I was." Lyra knelt beside him. "No," she said. "You're more." They stood together before the cradle. "This was where I began," Jack whispered. Lyra touched his shoulder. "And now you must choose where to go." Jack returned to the palace above, with new eyes. He no longer felt like a stranger wearing a crown. He was the true heir, and the Empire's survival was his duty. That night, he looked out at the stars from the royal balcony. Each one felt like a memory waiting to be unlocked. But before he could enjoy the peace, Zari rushed in, her face pale. "They broke into the royal vault," she said. "Not this one. The other." Jack turned sharply. "What did they take?" Zari hesitated. "A list," she said, "of royal children." Jack's heart skipped. "There were others?" Zari nodded slowly. "At least one." Jack looked up at the sky again. 1,000 questions burned in his mind. Was there a brother, a sister, or someone pretending to be? And if so, were they a friend or a weapon pointed at his throne? The stars were silent, but Jack knew they were watching. Every planet, every moon, every kingdom beyond Oron's space. All of them waited to see what the human king would do next. He couldn't fight the Varn alone. The Empire was still weak. Too many systems had broken away during the fall. Old allies had turned cold, some angry, some afraid, some simply forgotten. Jack sat in the royal ship, looking at the galaxy map. It was alive with light, each world blinking in different colors. He pointed at one. "Start with Cryon," he said. Lyra nodded beside him. "They hate us," she warned. "They won't welcome you." Jack smiled slightly. "Then it's a good place to start." The ship landed in Creon's capital, a frozen city built into ice mountains. The sky was gray, the wind sharp like blades. Cryon soldiers watched Jack from above, silent and armed. Jack walked toward their high council with no army, no weapons, only his words. The council chamber was shaped like a giant crystal cave. Dozens of Creon leaders sat on high seats of carved ice. Their skin was pale blue, and their voices echoed like thunder over snow. "You dare return?" one of them shouted. "After your empire left us to burn?" Jack stepped forward. "I wasn't there," he said, "but I am now." Another counselor spoke. "You want our fleets, our warriors. But what do we get in return?" Jack answered clearly. "You get a future. The Varn are not just coming for Oron. They will come for Cryon too. They will come for all of you." There was silence. Then, one old counselor stood up. He wore ancient armor, cracked but clean. "I fought beside your grandfather," he said. "He saved my life. You may have his blood. But do you have his fire?" Jack walked to the center of the chamber and pulled out a small hollow cube. It showed a pirate fleet attacking a neutral world near Cryon space. "I'm not asking for your help," he said. "I'm offering mine." The Creon Council watched as Jack's voice echoed again. "I'll deal with them alone. If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, you know I speak the truth." The council nodded slowly. "Then go," they said. "Prove yourself." Jack left that same day, flying straight toward the pirate nest. Lyra argued at first. "It's a trap," she warned. Jack smiled. Good, he replied. Let's spring it. The battle over the desert moon of Voston was fierce. Jack's fleet was small but fast and clever. He used tricks from Earth, old pilot moves, bait and ambush tactics. Lyra led the charge, fearless in her silver armor. Together, they scattered the pirates. And when their leader tried to escape, Jack caught him himself, face to face, hand to hand. News spread quickly. The human king had crushed a threat in a single day. Creon sent him a message the next morning. You have our blades, they said. We will fight beside you. After Creon came Salura, then Moxon, then the quiet monks of Taranva. One by one, the lost pieces of the empire began to return. Not for gold, not for power, but because they believed in Jack, in Kael Solari, in the man who had no crown but carried one anyway. Lyra watched all of it unfold, and one night, as the stars shone through the glass roof of the palace, she whispered to herself, he is becoming something more than king. He is becoming legend. The banners of the Auron Empire flew once more, not just above the palace, but above the skies of 10 allied worlds. The broken pieces of a forgotten kingdom were returning, and at the center stood Jack, no longer just a mechanic from Earth, no longer just a name. Now they called him the Flame King, a title whispered with awe, fear, and growing loyalty. He did not sit on the throne all day. He walked through cities, spoke to farmers, engineers, merchants, soldiers. He ate their food, listened to their stories. He fixed a mining drill with his own hands on a poor moon colony, and that one act spread like wildfire. He works, they said. He listens. He understands us. Even the old families of the empire, the rich houses who once ruled with pride, began to bend their heads, not from fear, but from something else. Respect, unease, and the knowledge that this king was different. But power brings eyes, and eyes bring danger. In the dark corners of the galaxy, old enemies began to stir. Pirate kings formed secret alliances. Assassins began placing bounties on Jack's head. And above them all, in the ruins of the Black Ring Nebula, a shadow moved, one that had been silent for too long. The Dark Star Legion, once defeated by Jack's ancestors, was rising again. And at its heart stood a man called Malrix. He wore black armor made from void metal. His voice was like stone cracking underwater. And he had only one goal, to destroy the last heir. Jack received the message late at night. It played in the sky over the palace for all to see. Malrix appeared like a ghost made of fire and darkness. I killed your father, he said. I watched him fall, screaming your name. You will die the same way. The stars fell silent. Even Lyra stood frozen, not because she feared the threat, but because she knew it wasn't a lie. Jack didn't speak for hours after the message. He sat, alone in the Hall of Stars, where past kings were carved in light. He looked up at the statue of his father, King Corvin Solari, strong jaw, proud armor, the same eyes Jack saw in the mirror. He whispered, you fought for this, and now, so will I. The next morning, he held a gathering of all allies. Leaders from Creon, Salura, Taranva, and more stood in silence. Jack didn't give a long speech. He didn't wear robes or a crown. He stood in simple armor and said, the enemy has returned. They want fear. I offer fire. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. We will not run. We will rise. The chamber roared in support, and for the first time in generations, the united banner of worlds was raised again. Lyra stood beside Jack on the balcony as ships flew in formation above. You sound like a king now, she said. Jack smiled faintly. No, he replied. I sound like someone who's had enough. But deep inside, he felt the weight growing, because if Malrix had truly killed his father, if the stories were true, then Jack wasn't just facing war, he was facing blood, his past and maybe his future, somewhere out there, in the cold parts of space. His greatest challenge waited, and it wore a face that might look too much like his own. The fire rings of Xanor were not just a battlefield, they were a warning, a place where stars burned too close to each other, where magnetic storms cracked open ships like eggs, and where the last Empire War had turned space into fire. Now they would burn again. Jack stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Auron's Light, surrounded by glowing screens and calm chaos. His fleet, 30 warships from 5 worlds, waited in tight formation. Beside him, Lyra wore battle armor made of silver and starlight. She looked like a goddess forged from war and grace. This place is cursed, said one officer. Jack nodded. That's why they think we won't fight here. But we will. The enemy fleet appeared like ghosts from hyperspace, dozens of black ships with red lights. They moved without sound, without mercy. The Dark Star Legion had arrived. Malrix did not speak. No threats, no speeches, only action. The sky turned red as the first shots fired. Energy blasts flew like comets. Ships exploded into silent flames. Jack's command ship shook, but he held steady. Hold the line, he ordered. Don't give them an inch. Lyra led the vanguard in a smaller attack cruiser. Her voice crackled through the comms. We're breaking their left flank. Push now. Jack saw her ship dive through fire, blades of light spinning from its wings. She destroyed 3 enemy drones with perfect strikes. He felt a strange fear, not for himself, but for her. She had become more than his guardian, more than his political wife. She was his heart. Suddenly, alarm screamed on the command deck. Enemy boarding pods incoming, shouted the chief guard. Jack grabbed his blade and turned. Seal the core, he said. I'll deal with them myself. He met the invaders in the lower halls, 6 dark soldiers with armor like shadows. Jack fought like a storm. The spear of his grandfather burned with blue fire in his hands. He remembered Earth's street fights and Oren's royal training. He mixed them together and became something new. One by one, they fell. But not before one of them whispered a warning. He watches you, it said. He waits. Jack didn't rest. He returned to the bridge, blood on his armor. The battle outside was turning. Their allies were winning. But then, the flagship of the Dark Star appeared. It was not a ship. It was a fortress in space. Black metal and pulsing red lights, shaped like a giant scorpion with claws that broke moons. From the heart of the beast came a voice. It echoed across all channels. It was Malrix. You wear his face, he said, but you are not him. You are soft. You are weak. Jack stepped forward. I am not him, he replied. I am better. He ordered all ships to focus fire on the Scorpion vessel. At the same time, Lyra broke through the center. Her ship slammed into the enemy's shield and unleashed a gravity pulse. The shield cracked. Jack's fleet struck with everything they had. The enemy flagship burned. But before it vanished, a dark pod launched from it, disappearing into the fire rings. Malrix had escaped. But the battle was won. Hours later, Jack walked through the medbay. He found Lyra lying on a bed, armor cracked, breathing slow. She opened her eyes and whispered, I told you I'd protect you. Jack took her hand and said, next time, let me protect you too. Outside, the fire rings still glowed, but they were no longer a warning. They were a crown, forged in battle, claimed by fire. The battle was over, but peace did not come. The Dark Star Legion was shattered, but not destroyed, and Malrix had vanished into the unknown. Jack stood before a council of allies in the Hall of Unity. They praised his victory. They offered him full control of the Empire, but Jack raised one hand and said, It's not finished. He's not finished. The ancient seers of Terranva confirmed it. Through glowing water and whispering crystals, they saw it too. Malrix had fled to a forbidden zone, a place not marked on any map. The Maze of Echoes, one seer said, a labyrinth of black holes and dead gods. Only one path leads to the core, and at the center lies the crystal heart. Lyra stood beside Jack, still healing, still strong. You shouldn't go alone, she said. Jack looked at her with quiet fire in his eyes. I was born alone, he said, but I won't be alone anymore. They left at dawn, not with a fleet, but with a single small ship, stealth class, fast and silent, no armies, no banners, only trust. The maze was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Stars bent sideways, gravity screamed in strange tones. Time felt thin. Sometimes minutes felt like hours. Sometimes memories came alive and spoke. One time, Jack saw his mother's face in the stars. She smiled at him and vanished. Another time, he heard his own voice crying as a baby. The maze tested the mind as much as the ship. Lyra kept him grounded. Her voice was steady. Her presence was strong. They flew together through storm after storm, following whispers, energy trails, and light that wasn't light. Finally, they reached the center. A black sphere floated there, silent, cold, perfect. Around it circled the crystal heart, a fragment of pure energy, older than time. It pulsed like it was alive, calling to something inside Jack. He stepped out of the ship in a suit of glowing armor. Lyra stayed behind, her head and pressed to the glass. "Be careful," she whispered. Jack nodded. "This is what it's all been for," he said. As he floated closer to the crystal heart, visions struck him, memories that weren't his, worlds he'd never seen, voices he'd never heard, but all of them familiar, all of them connected. Then a shadow stepped out from the black sphere. It was Malrix, but different. His armor was cracked, his face half hidden in flame. He looked at Jack and said, "You've come to finish what your father started." Jack raised his weapon. "I came to end what you broke." They fought in silence, blades of light and void clashing in slow motion, reality bent around them. Each hit shook the stars. Malrix was stronger, older, but Jack was faster, wiser, and not alone. In the final strike, Malrix grabbed Jack's wrist. "Do you even know what I am?" he growled. Jack's eyes widened, memories returned. Malrix wasn't just a rival, he was his uncle, his father's brother, once a protector, now a destroyer. "I tried to save the Empire," Malrix said, "but your father chose hope. He chose weakness." Jack shook his head. "No," he said, "he chose humanity, and I choose it too." He drove the blade through Malrix's chest. The shadow screamed and exploded into light. The crystal heart pulsed once and flew into Jack's chest, merging with him. He didn't scream. He didn't fall. He simply became. When he opened his eyes, he was glowing. Not like a king, not like a god, but like a man who had found all his pieces at last. He flew back to the ship. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. He smiled and said, "Let's go home." The stars welcomed them home, but it was not the same galaxy they had left. News of Jack's final battle spread faster than light. Malrix was gone. The crystal heart had chosen a new bearer, and the heir had returned, transformed. Complete, Jack stepped out of the ship onto the palace platform. His armor glowed softly, not from power, but from peace. The storm within him had passed. All across the city, bells rang. Citizens gathered in glowing streets. They held banners high, not just of Auron, but of every allied world. They chanted his name, but Jack raised a hand and silenced them with kindness. "I am not here to rule you," he said through the loudspeakers. "I am here to build something better with you." The Council of Worlds met days later. Each leader took their seat beneath a sky dome filled with stars. Jack stood at the center, not on a throne, but on the floor. Beside them, equal, present. Lyra stood behind him, now not just a protector, but a partner. She no longer wore the stiff uniform of the old guard. She wore silver cloth, soft and flowing. Her eyes were gentle but sharp. She had chosen him, and now the people had too. "I am Kael Solari," Jack began. "Born in exile, raised on Earth, shaped by both fire and metal. But I am not only the heir of Auron, I am the voice of something new." He paused, looking at the faces around him, human and alien, young and old, scarred and wise. "We cannot return to the past," he said. "We can only move forward, together." And then, he spoke the words that changed history. "I dissolve the throne. I form the human empire. Not ruled by blood, but by unity. Not controlled by fear, but led by choice. We will protect each other, grow together, decide together." Gasps filled the chamber, some in awe, some in shock, but no one spoke against it, because they saw what Jack had become. Not a king by force, but a leader by soul. In the days that followed, great changes began. The first Citizen Council was formed. Education and technology were shared across systems. Former enemies were invited to speak. Old walls were broken. New bridges were built. Jack walked through the cities with Lyra at his side. Children ran to him. Elders offered blessings. He never wore a crown again, but every person who met him knew he didn't need one. In private, Lyra once asked him, "Do you miss the throne?" Jack smiled and said, "I never wanted to sit above anyone. I only wanted to stand beside them." They visited Earth 1 year later, not in secret, but in pride. Jack looked at the garage where his journey began. Rust still covered the doors. The tools were still on the wall, but he was no longer the man who belonged there. He placed a small piece of crystal from the maze above the workbench, a reminder of where he came from, of who he chose to become. As the stars turned above him, and the galaxy hummed with quiet hope. The people spoke a new name across the systems, not KL Solari, not the Flame King, not the warrior of the fire rings, but simply Jack, the human, the one who inherited an empire and gave it back to the stars.